welcome to Knock Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Let's Get Biblical Q&A with Rabbi Tovia Singer, episode 96. Welcome back to the show, Rabbi, and welcome all of you viewers out there. Thank you for tuning in. How you doing, Rabbi?
I am doing good.
Good.
Recovered
Yes.
from crazy jet lag.
Oh,
of,
right.
U.S. to Jakarta.
That's insane.
Crazy. Insane.
So you used to travel, when you used to travel from New York, for example, to Israel, you're
That's
talking
nothing.
That's
a joke.
That's like 7 hours, right? 7 hours variance?
No, it's 10. It depends if you're going east or west.
So how is 12
10 or 11 hours.
So how is 12 hours any different then?
Are you insane?
I'm totally serious.
Coming back was 30 hours of traveling.
Okay.
It's essentially, it's one 12-hour flight and one 13-hour flight with whatever in between. Literally.
Okay.
This would blow your mind away, this flight. So I miscalculated. I kind of went back to New York and then from there. But anyways, the point is the jet lag is a killer because it's 12 hours. It really wiped me out for a thing. I mean, I'll be going to Israel leading a tour in in 3 weeks. That's Israel. That's only 16 hours of traveling.
Right.
Or so.
So 3 weeks, 3 weeks now, and then also, of course, we've got the Walk the Tanakh Talk Israel tour coming up in 2018, probably March, April. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah,
Okay.
March, April. Very excited about that. Also, I have another tour coming up, and that's with my friend Jono and Ross Nickel.
Nice.
No, he's a great guy. He's number one. It's really an amazing team, and we're going to be. It's a November. It's a November tour that's coming up, and there are seats left on that tour. This tour is done, but the next tour with Jono is you can still sign up with it, and just go on truth2u.org, and it's there. And then with God's help, we'll be doing another tour in kind of March in the spring. In very early spring in 2018, God willing. So
nice. It's
really nice, tour Israel. That's great.
That's really cool.
Imagine if we had to do a tour, touring Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I'd kill myself. Here's Cleveland, Ohio. And now we're going to Akron, Ohio, where they make tires. Take a look, give a look over here. And now we're going to Cincinnati, and now we're going to pass away. So I'm very glad that we're not touring Ohio or Youngstown, Pennsylvania, but touring Jerusalem, the real Jerusalem, not because there are a few cities there are Bethlehems in the United States. Mm-hmm. There are 5 cities called Shiloh. Those are the fake ones. We're doing the real thing.
Nice.
So that's very exciting.
So the trip that we're doing in March, April, how long is that? A 7-day or 10-day, 5-day?
No, it's going to be I think a 9-day tour.
9-day, okay, gotcha.
And it's just traveling through scriptures, traveling through the Holy Land.
Nice.
If you're interested in snorkeling, this is not the tour for you. If you're interested in seeing things in Jerusalem, walking where the prophets preached, and seeing the places where the patriarchs were buried and lived and so on, and Hebron, you do want to join us. If you want to see where Gideon sent thousands of men to drink from a stream to come up with just a few that would be worthy of defeating the Midianites, you'll join us. If you want to be at Mount Carmel, where Elijah the prophet defeated the priests of Baal, you're going to want to join us. If you're interested in soccer, This is not the right. That's what I told you.
All right.
That's it. It's all about Scripture. And then every night, in fact, we'll do some shows from the tour, but every night we do a Bible, Bible studies and so on. So it's really very exciting.
Nice.
And I'm looking forward to that.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so I guess we're ready to kick off the show. I'm gonna. The phone lines are open, by the way. 855-95. Hold on 1 second. Login failed. Let me do that again. Hang on. Well, interesting. Maybe I've got the caps lock on or something. Hang on. Well, in just a second, we're going to go ahead and play a sound bite, and then I'll figure out this. In fact, I'll do that now, so you can start it. I'll figure out the login situation in just a moment. So here's a sound. Right. Here's a sound clip for a question that's out there right now. Okay, let me play this out.
Hi, Rabbi. I have a question. Why did Samuel not want a king?
That's pretty cut and dry. So do you want to... I'm not really sure what his motive for asking that was. Maybe that would help with the context of the question. But I guess there is a lot of interesting things about it. Yeah, sure. That's a good question. Okay. Yeah, go ahead and take it away.
The question is, why in the book of 1 Samuel, when the nation turns to the prophet and asks for a king, why was Samuel so displeased with their request? And essentially had to turn to God, and God instructed Samuel to listen, to heed the call of the nation for a king. And now the reason this question, I'm going to strengthen his question, because in fact, if you go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 17, verse 15, the Torah literally says that if the nation will ask for a king, so you should give them a king from among your brethren, and so on and so forth. So it actually is in the Torah that you'll have a king, and in fact, there's much more there. So why was there such a reluctance on the part of Samuel, who was... I was going to say was one of the greatest prophets, but he really was. He was a giant. And he, in contrast to other periods in Jewish history, he really stood out. Let's say in the days of Isaiah, so there was Hosea, there was Micah, there was Amos. The days of Shmuel, there really was, as Scripture tells us, there was a dearth of prophets. So that he had the nation's attention and complete respect and obedience. And so why was he so dissatisfied with the choice they made? And this is a very, very good question. And the answer is you have to look carefully at what the exact request is. We're going to try to make sense out of all this. So the nation asked Samuel, you'll find this in 1 Samuel chapter 8, where the nation turns to Samuel and says that we want a king like the other nations around us who also have a king. That means we want a king. They didn't say to him, we want a king because we want to get closer to God. They didn't say we want a king because, if we had someone like David, who wrote the book of Psalms, it would bring us into a deeper, more intimate connection with the Almighty. They said they want to be like the Goyim. We want a king because we want to be like the nations of the world. Now this was very, very troubling to Samuel. You want to be like the Goyim, like the nations of the world? This is very interesting. So the question is, what's going on here? Because that actually, if you go back to Deuteronomy, that's what the text says. The nation will say, we want a king like the other nations of the world. What bothered Samuel? And because the Jews were doing what essentially the text said they would do, and then we have a commandment to have a king. So what's going on here? I mean, why is a king important? And why was Samuel reading this differently than the Almighty was? And Samuel, of course, was a holy man of God. He was an extraordinary individual. So this is really interesting. So when the Jewish people, if you go back to Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 15, it really says there that when the Jews will enter the land and you'll conquer the nations about you, then you'll have a king. Then the nation will ask for a king, and then you should give them one. But then it tells us what kind of king. It's not a democracy. It's not like in the United States they had this crazy election in November. But no, the Almighty himself is going to choose exactly who this king is. It's going to be an absolute theocracy, and this king has to live up to extraordinary standards. He has to even keep a Sefer Torah with him all the time. He's not allowed to take for himself many wives and acquire for himself much wealth and so on. He has to be a person of God that the Almighty will choose. And in fact, the Almighty did choose Saul. It was not Samuel that did, and the same thing would happen for Saul's predecessor, King David, whom Samuel was guided to choose by the Almighty. So here's the interesting thing. So watch this. This is really very, very sweet, and I'm very grateful for this question. If the Jewish people ask for a king because they want to be closer to God, in a sense they don't need a king that badly. Why? Because that means that they want to be closer to God. The problem is that they said, we want a king not because we want to be closer to the Almighty, not because we want someone like King David, or someone like Hezekiah, or someone like Josiah, or someone like Jotam. These are all the great Davidic kings. They're saying we want to imitate the ways of the nations around us. Now, watch this. If the nation is not spiritually up to par, meaning that the reason they're requesting a king is that they want to be like the Goyim, we want to imitate the ways of the nations around us who were all wicked, what do they need? They need medicine. That means they need a doctor. And they need a doctor to treat them. So the antidote for a nation that is in a lot of trouble, that wants to imitate the ways of the nation, is find a king who really is a holy man. And you go later on in 1 Kings, in 1 Samuel, see there that you must follow what he says, and he has to be a man of God, and you must heed what he says to you. So the king in this case, if you watch carefully, it's not that the Jews are going, we need a king. I like to be like the other nations. Okay, give it to them. What's happening is Samuel, of course, feels bad because there's only one God and they should only have one king, and have a human king was certainly not something that he was looking forward to. He's aware of the text, but they're saying, give us a king like the Goyim? What do you mean you want a king like the nations of the world? And again, we say the nations of the world here, we're not talking about Canada. I mean, a nice country, I think. We're talking about all the nations that were in the region, all engaged in every abomination imaginable. These are the people that you want to imitate. So Hashem says, if in fact the nation falls to such a low state, that's exactly what they need. But not a king like in other nations. How do other nations have a king? Because you have a warrior who destroys another empire, because you have a Nebuchadnezzar that destroys the previous empire and now builds a Babylonian empire, or you have an Alexander the Great that defeats the Persians, or there's some coup. No, it's the one that God will choose, who will be among your brethren, and it'll be someone whose heart is with the Lord. So therefore, a king who's literally like a rabbi is exactly what a nation needs that is in such spiritual trouble that they are looking to imitate the ways of the nation. So that was Samuel is very easy to understand. One other point I just should place in here, the book of Judges, and Samuel essentially is the last of the judges. The book of Judges essentially is there to explain to us why we need a king. If you could take almost any book in Scripture and say, why is this book here? Well, the reason why the book of Judges is there, of course, there's so much, but you have these horrific events. They actually happen very sporadically, but you have the Pesel Micha, you have the idol in 19 and 20, you have the concubine who is murdered. These are horrible events, and the book of Judges ends by saying that every person was doing what was right in his eyes. That's how the whole book ends. So the book of Judges is there to say we need a king. But we not any king. We need a king that not only will unite the nation and not allow such events to unfold, but actually need a king that will be a spiritual guide. Now, a king can't just operate solo. It's like on a plane. You can have a pilot, but you also need a co-pilot, meaning every king needed a prophet who would guide him, who would put him in the right direction, who would advise him. In fact, when the Davidic dynasty came to a pause, and I call it a pause because Mashiach is going to come and then it will be restored. But when Zerubbabel who was the last of the Davidic kings, when he was deposed and sent to Babylon, so at that point, that's why one of the reasons why prophecy came to an end. Because at that point, the Second Temple, there were no legitimate Davidic kings. There were governors like Zerubbabel. Excuse me, I said earlier Zerubbabel, I meant Zedekiah. So therefore, the way the nation was guided was there was a king, but there was also a high priest who was consulted, and there was a prophet who was there to warn the king. And some prophets got themselves in a lot of trouble because they said things, I'm talking about much later on in Jewish history, they said things to the kings that the kings didn't want to hear, which got some prophets in an enormous amount of trouble. So that's where everything is happening. In truth, so here this is very sweet, very sweet. God is saying if the nation ever finds itself in a position where it's saying we want a king to be like the nations of the world, they really are in trouble. They need a doctor immediately. They need a king, but not like the other nations of the world. How do they acquire kings? You think that the Assyrians had kings because they saw who was davening every day 3 times a day? You think the Babylonians, the Canaanites were choosing kings because based on of the piety? No, they were warriors. So that's not what Hashem said. Oh, you want a king? I'll give you a king. But it's going to be, I'm going to choose it. And it's going to be a person that's going to be of God. Now, that person has free will. Saul was a great man, but he made some errors toward the end of his prophetic career, towards the end of his life, and David would then replace him. So that's the key. The key is it's actually wanting a king, demanding a king, but with the like the other nations means you really need a king, but that king is going to be like nothing like the other nations. In fact, the Torah emphasizes this king can't be from the other nations. It cannot be someone who is not a member of the children of Israel. It cannot be a Nochri. It must be among your brothers, and it'll be the one who I choose. And it'll be someone who will be of an extraordinary character. So the actually antidote to a nation that's in that much trouble is a proper king.
Wow. Okay, so it's really interesting because I've heard so many different stories that they try to tie in with Christianity and how that was God's way of showing that God is going to allow this Jesus figure to be a king over Israel. It's a whole lot of stuff. I mean, that's really mishmashed together. But again, like you mentioned so many times before, you have to take away so much to actually be able to implement something that's false. But hey, what can you do, right? So, okay, so let's take this next caller. Caller, welcome to the show. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, my name is John.
Hi, John.
I'm calling from Las Vegas.
Very good. Welcome to the show. What's the question for Rabbi?
Very spiritual city.
The question I have for the Rabbi is, I could hear my echo really bad, but I'll try putting the phone away.
Just talk.
Okay.
The question I have for the Rabbi is, I want him to explain Genesis before the flood. I thought angels didn't have free will. How come those angels had it?
Okay, so
Are you talking about what Genesis chapter 6? What chapter are you referring to?
So what chapter, John, of Genesis are you referring to?
I'm the one where the angels came down and had relationships with the women, and
Good
they
one.
had kids.
That's actually that's a really cool point. I never actually connected that together. I've always heard angels don't have free will either, but if so, then how did they pull off this whole? If they were actually angels, that's what we're going to find out.
Yeah, because I thought that God didn't want them to do that, and if they didn't have free will, how come they were able to do that?
That's cool. Okay, let's disconnect, and you can tune in for your answer. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you, John. Shalom. Bye. That's actually kind of a cool question. All right, have fun with that one.
No, this isn't difficult because the key is the answer is very simple, and that is there's nowhere in Genesis chapter 6 verse 2 where we are told that these were angels. In fact, they're not angels. If they were angels, how are they sleeping with human beings? Moreover, if they're angels, if you just think about this for a moment, if they were angels, right? So then what is Genesis 6? Let's back up for a moment. Genesis 6 is conveying to us how the world had sunk so low, with the exception of Noah and his immediate family, and why there needs to be a flood, and essentially beginning the world again with Noah and his family, 8 people on a boat, on this ark. So if these were angels having sexual relations with women and forcing themselves upon women, this would be the most ridiculous chapter possible, because as it turns out, angels were not destroyed in the flood. So why is God beating everybody else up if they were angels? So the reason, unfortunately, some translations render it as angels.
Okay, and Rabbi, can you hear me still? Let's see what happens. I think his internet. Let me disconnect from his Skype, and we'll recall him again. Sounds like it got frozen there. Let's see. Interesting. Another interesting thing is, if they weren't angels, then what were they? It's kind of a odd thing to. Bear with me just a second. Okay, we'll wait for him to call back because that means his internet definitely just crashed or something. Call on no answer. Yeah. So we'll just sit tight for me. He'll probably call me back in a moment. If his internet is messed up, he'll probably reboot his computer and then call back. So we'll sit tight. But yeah, so that's been something that's always been a curiosity of mine too, and I know probably all of you guys is when the sons of God, and the daughters of men. It's like, what does that mean? I'm hoping he'll actually address that for sure. The only other thing I thought of maybe the sons of God really was referring to those who were just dedicated to serving God, and the daughters of men were just the daughters of the worldly people. And then I don't know. But then they get this whole thing about how they were the heroes of old and all this other stuff. That'd be kind of cool. We'll wait one more second here. While we're waiting for him to call me back, might as well put this out there for you guys, for those who don't know. So if you don't have these already, that's the wrong one. Then there it is right there. So I'll just put this on screen for just a minute. So basically, the 2-volume book set that you see on screen, there's also a little pack there of DVDs. CD, 24-pack CD that's no longer available, at least for now. He may make them available again sometime soon. Not really sure. But until then, you can actually get all the contents of those 24-pack CDs. You can get them on his website, outreachjudaism.org. And so if you have the books and you want to read along, basically what you'll turn to whatever chapter, and whatever title is on that chapter, then that's the actual title you're going to look for in the MP3s. And by doing so, you're going to be you'll be reading the whole entire chapter or the segment, and then you'll have Rabbi Singer telling you, explaining it more in detail than what's actually on the pages. So anyway, so there's a place if you want to download all of the podcasts, like all together, it's like all 24, whatever it includes. There's a place you can do like a donation of any amount, which actually I did that myself. I kind of went on, and because I lost the downloads I had, and so I re-downloaded them again, but instead of doing them one at a time, I just did like all of them as a big bundle, and it worked out really good. So I put like $20 in there for it, but it was worth every penny. So listen to him on the road, listen to him at home, whatever the case may be. So let me see if that's him trying to reach me through another avenue. I'm going to call him back again and see what happens. If he doesn't call back, then that just simply means that that may mean that his internet just completely crashed and we may not be able to get him back. Let's see what happens. Okay, we'll give it just a few more minutes. If I can't get him, then we will go ahead and close the show out, and maybe sometime a little bit later, if he calls me, we'll try to rebroadcast again. But for all those who are interested in going on the Walk the Tanakh Talk Israel tour with Rabbi Singer and I, that'll be, like we mentioned earlier, be happening sometime around March, April, before it gets hot, of course. And the prices, I think right now, there's no way to know what the price is going to be yet because we haven't actually booked anything or planned it yet. We're trying to put the feelers out to see if there's going to be enough people interested. But they're thinking it's, like Rabbi said, a 9-day trip, not 7. And $2,200 is going to be the basic cost, and that does not include your flight, but it does include everything else. So once you land in Israel, you don't pay for anything. The tips, food, whatever. I mean, I guess if you want to buy some souvenirs, that's on you. But for the most part, everything, once you hit the ground, everything is paid for. So, and that will be, if you want to send me a message on Facebook, you can. And I'll add you to the interested list. Once we get the information set up, we'll probably have, Rabbi Singer will have another website set up like he does on everything, besttour.org, and it'll explain everything. And so, but until then, just kind of keep following along on the Facebook posts that I have. I actually made a document out of it so you can actually find it very easily, okay? Looks like I'm getting a message here. Hang on. Who's it from? Let's see. That's funny, Avram. That's a friend of mine on Skype, so I better be reserving Better be, what is this? Reserving a night to come over. You know I will. We're going to have a whole Wirecast thing anyway. I'm going to have to train you up on this stuff. So, okay, let's try Rabbi one more time. And if he doesn't answer, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take this caller. That way if he does connect. Caller, tell me your name, where you're calling from. Sorry, we're having some, I think Rabbi's internet may have just gone AWOL. So if you want to tell me your name and where you're calling from and the question for him, I'll write it down. And
Okay.
if you don't mind, sorry about the delay there and the echo. I'm sure.
Yeah, my name is Ethan, and I'm calling from Dallas, Texas.
Ethan from Dallas. Yeah, you've got my area code here, 325, or this general area anyway. Ethan, what is the question for Rabbi Singer?
My question is with Yeshayahu 24.
Okay, Isaiah
where
24.
Where it says, behold, Hashem is emptying the land.
Okay.
Now what's that prophecy? Is it a prophecy for the future? Is it a prophecy that's already taken place? What exactly does that, what does it point to?
Okay, so Isaiah 24:1. Okay, so you just want to know.
Yeah, 1 all the way down to about 18, I think.
Okay. More future. Okay, that sounds good. Well, let's go ahead and hang up, and we're going to give Rabbi a few more minutes to try to call in. And if he doesn't make it, we'll try to get your question on next week's show, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, my friend. Okay, very good. If y'all want to call a few more times and buy him some more time, that'd be fine. Phone line's open. Let me put that number. I'll keep that number on the screen for now, and that way it can just remain there. And if you guys call in, I'll just call in, say hi, whatever, and that'll buy Rabbi a little bit more time. Past, present, or future. Okay, cool. And by the way, just to give you a little insight too on the phone lines, most of you know this already, some of you don't. If you call in and it goes straight to voicemail, it's because someone else is actually is already on hold, and so leave a message. You may not be able to get back in depending on how many people are calling. Hey, Shalom, this is William. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hey, William. I'm Michael Curtis. How you doing, sir?
Michael Curtis, pleasure. How are you today?
I'm doing good, man. I got a question you're going to love.
Okay.
It's I enrolled in conversion classes with Rabbi Kaufman.
Okay, gotcha.
And one of the things both the rabbis have talked about, but never really distinguished enough that I know you're going to be interested in too, is how does the afterlife differ for an observant Jew versus a Noahide? Because they say things like, why many times it's like, why even go through the difficulties of conversion? Because of the Noahide, you fully share in the world to come.
Right.
But is it exactly the same?
Right.
You get where I'm coming from?
I do. I totally got you. Yeah. In other words, is there more benefits? Is it going to be more divine for the Orthodox Jew than it will be to the Noahide who feels like a second-class citizen, basically?
Exactly. And I don't want to put it like we shouldn't do it anyway. Like, our difference would be like, if I can do less and have less commitment and get as much reward, why wouldn't I? I'm not saying that. I just would like to know the differences.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, I'm with you completely. I mean, I've heard that this topic has come up a lot in outside circles, and it's a very genuine one. It's one that a lot of people do want to know. I mean, I think, and of course, you would probably agree. Anybody who is just trying to get away with as little as possible, their heart's not really in the right place anyway. So
that's right. And I love you. Love Rabbi Kaufman. Love Rabbi Singer. Never would have found any of them without Tanakh Talk.
That's awesome.
You're a blessed man, and we love supporting you any way we can.
Thank you, brother.
Take care, sir.
All right, you too. Take care. Shalom. That's awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a great question. I can't, a lot of these questions I can kind of answer a lot of. This one I can't because he already, Michael, he basically already he already mentioned everything that I know of, and that is, well, it's supposed to be the same, but then again, you hear, and you get the feeling that being if you don't convert to Judaism, that you are second class, and maybe halakhically you're not supposed to be treated like one, but I think in the reality of it is, it does feel like maybe the Jewish community as a whole, even though they're not supposed to treat you that way, maybe subconsciously it affects you that way somehow. Shalom, this is William. What is your question for Rabbi? Thanks for calling in, by the way. And what is your name? Boy, am I scrambled. Caller, can you hear?
Hello?
Yes. Hey, how are you? Welcome to the show. What's your name and where are you calling from?
me, John again.
Oh,
I
yeah,
just
yeah,
had
yeah.
one more question.
Go ahead. Do me a favor. Turn down your monitor, your computer. Turn it down for a second.
Hold on.
Okay. Great.
Who's in here?
Well, the good news is, at least we'll be able to take a lot of phone calls
Okay.
and get a lot of questions written down for next week.
The
So,
question I had is where it says in Jeremiah
okay.
23:25,
Okay.
where it says the prophets are liars and will lead Israel astray.
I think we just talked about this last 2 weeks ago, I believe. It was a pretty major topic. Yeah. Literally, it was a pretty hot topic there. So I'm going to write it down anyway, and I will look and see if I can find a link for you on that. But I'll write it down. Rabbi might actually be able to tell me exactly where it's at. So Jeremiah 23:25, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Oh, no problem at all. Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Okay, good deal. Prophets are liars. Okay, cool. All right, that's good. Yeah, we actually just discussed this, and it was pretty interesting. Okay, cool. And so for all those who maybe don't or are not aware of it too, the rest of the schedule for Tanakh Talk, Rabbi Michael Skovak, also counter missionary. Most of you probably already know him, but Sunday nights at 8:30, he's got a show we're doing called Rabbi Cross Examines the New Testament. I think tonight we're going to be on Romans chapter 3. So it took us a while to get past Matthew and through Acts, but now we're in Romans, and we're going to keep going all the way to the end. So a lot of people are really anxious to get into Revelation, but unfortunately, you just got to be patient for that one. But it'll get here eventually. So, okay, let me try to call him again, and if he doesn't answer this time, then we're going to go ahead and probably just have to disconnect for the day. And just, but like I said, if he can reach me sometime in the next hour, because I don't have a show lined up for mid-afternoon today, so the Hebrew class will be on hold. That'd be funny if that was Rabbi calling. Hey, I should try to send him a message. Maybe he can just answer some of these questions through the phone call. Welcome to the show. Please tell me your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, William. This is Beth from St. Louis.
Hi, Beth. Welcome to the show. Sorry about not having a Rabbi
Thank you.
readily available, but go ahead and tell me your question, and we'll try to get it presented to him as soon as possible, okay?
Okay. I just heard, or read, something kind of interesting to me about unconditional love.
Okay.
And that unconditional love began with the Jesus tradition. And I said, oh, really? But I know. And I thought, well, I'm going to ask the rabbi. I can't say that I'm as immersed in Torah as he is, but is unconditional love something that is a principle found in the Torah? And then where they're getting this idea that it began with the Jesus tradition is because Jesus said, "Love your enemies."
Right.
Is loving your enemies and unconditional love
right
a principle of? Okay.
Well, it is in short, and I'm not going to go into anything, but loving your enemies is most certainly mentioned through Tanakh. So just on that reference alone, I would say no. But yeah, I definitely want Rabbi to tackle this one. So that's a great question, by the way. Okay, well, Beth.
Yeah, I thought so too. I'm not confident enough to be able to have an answer for that. And I wanted his take on that.
Right. Gotcha. That's awesome. Okay, cool. All right. Well, hopefully he will enlighten me, and maybe he'll show me if I'm right or wrong or not. At least that'd be fun. I love learning the questions that I've never heard of before are my favorites because I don't know the answers to most. So thank you so much, Beth.
Hey. Thank you, William.
You're welcome. Shalom. Take care. Okay, cool. Yeah. Actually, this is good. This will be good. So, okay, I keep saying one more time, but the phone keeps ringing, so I figure as long as the phone rings, we'll take your questions too. We'll just let these things pile up. Hey, there we go. There's that handsome rabbi. What happened, man? I thought
you didn't pay your bills. That's what happened. The credit card didn't go through.
Oh, that's funny. So, hold on, let me put you back up on the screen here now. Take this off and put this one on. There we go. Okay, cool. Yeah, it actually you got it completely froze, and then I tried to call you like 8 times, and it wouldn't go through for some reason. So glad to have you back. Glad to have you back. Okay, now I'm gonna read off some questions. Again, this is a live call-in show, so if the phone rings,
Should I just finish off that last question?
yeah, because I don't even know where you left off. I was so distracted by the freeze, it caught me off guard. Go right ahead.
All right, so let me just do this, okay? What is very difficult for people is that they're relying on translations, and I use the word translation in quotation marks. A translation, by definition, is man-made, and if you're relying on translations, you're in a lot of trouble for more reasons than you think. That is that the Tanakh uses conventions, linguistic conventions that we would never use today. So just as a point, people of power, mighty people, are called B'nai Elohim, or for example, you see in the book of Psalm, chapter 29, Havel Lashem B'nai Elim, which means the sons of the mighty, powerful people. What happens in Genesis chapter 6 is you have people who are basically princes, people of enormous power, and they use that power, Scripture tells us, in order to exploit women who are weak, who were unable to defend themselves, and they essentially rape them and force them to have their children. The reason why all these translations create problems is there is a reason for it. And that is, today, in the 21st century, we don't talk this way. Today, if we call something is God, then it's not human. It's not, there's God and then there's everything else. But the word Elohim or Al, or all those roots, for instance, you have famously in the book of Exodus, you have chapter 21 that if there's a problem, you have a slave who wants to stay. So it says you should bring him to the judges who will pierce his ear. But if you look at the original Hebrew, it says you'll bring them to Elohim, which should mean God. So it is important to know. You'll find the same thing in Psalm 82, verse 6. The people of power are called Elohim, because the word Elohim really is descriptive, and its root comes from the word power. It is the name of God used in Scripture, but it's not really God's personal name. It's a description that God is powerful and God is mighty. For this reason, incidentally, the name of God, Elohim, and I'm using it, typically Jews don't even say it that way. I'm doing it for this program, is used exclusively in the first chapter of the book of Genesis. So therefore, in Genesis 6, verse 2, you had powerful men. As I said, I can give you numerous examples all over Scripture where people of power, B'nai Elim and so on, it's all the same root. But it means here that people of power exploited women who were not powerful. And this is a problem that we see going on to this day. And this was one of the contributing sins that brought about the flood. And in fact, if you see the following passage, you'll see that God said that He's going to shorten man's expected lifespan as a response. So as a result of this, so you see clearly here that these are men, but powerful men. There is, again, something it would not confuse a religious Jew who studies Tanakh in the Hebrew as everybody I grew up with, or my family in our home, our books are just Hebrew. We don't use translations and so on and so forth. I'm not saying that there are some Jews who become religious later and do use translations. Right. So therefore, because this is so conventional, no, people are not misled by this. But people who depend on translations are in enormous trouble. Just think to yourself, if these were angels who came down from heaven and then had sex with women, like, I don't know, Hercules' mother was impregnated by Zeus. So a flood comes, angels don't drown in the flood. So what does the flood accomplish?
But why wouldn't angels die in the flood if they don't have wings? I mean, the whole thing about wings is kind of mythological to begin with. It's not like they can fly. But then you also have the thing where it says these were the same that became mighty men, which were of old men of renown. What is that referring to or alluding to?
That means these are people who were there was, like today, you have a society hierarchy and a class and caste system. It doesn't have to be in India among the Hindus. We see it all around us where people are very powerful financially. They are the heads of clans. And then there are people who are very weak, who really have no choice, who really are completely subordinate to these individuals. These men, in this case, exploited their powerful position in order to rape women and force them to bear their children. If you say these are angels, none of this makes sense. I know someone is going to tell me there's a medrash that describes something about angels. I don't want to get into that.
Right.
Because it's not little, but that's the answer to the question.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so I'm going to we'll move on to another question. The phone line is open. If it rings, we'll drop the question in the middle of the ring and take the caller. So next question is this is from Ethan. He said Isaiah 24, is it past, present, or future? And let me see, I've got it back up on the screen here again. Let me read it too. Okay, Isaiah 24:1. Behold, the Lord. Let me just put it up so people can read it here. Okay, there we go. That was just a simple question, so there was no elaboration added to that. So behold, Lord. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, the question I'm confused is what part of this chapter is he referring to? That's
gotcha. Okay, so, and it shall be as with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with his master. What is that actually talking about? I can definitely take that Christological in a heartbeat. Because Paul said there's no Jew, no Gentile, no male nor female. So that probably was not what he was asking, but I'm just trying to give you more than what I was given. So let's take this caller, and we'll come back in.
All right.
Caller, welcome to the show. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from. Caller, can you hear us? Again.
Yes.
There we go. Please tell me your name and where you're calling from.
I'm calling from New York.
Okay. And what's your name?
I don't want to say.
That's okay.
I just don't want to say.
That is no problem at all. What is the question for Rabbi?
I'm an Orthodox Jew, and I was wondering, and I've completed the Talmud 2 times, and the Tiferes Yisrael, and I'm going off to university very soon, and I know there's a lot of missionaries there, and yes, I've listened to what both Rabbi Singer and Rabbi Skovek have said, L'dal malo tomer apikorasis, to know what to say to a heretic. But I don't. But there's part of me that thinks that because the Tiferes Yisrael says that you can read the Greek scriptures, you can read the New Testament if you have a solid foundation in Torah, is that allowed or not?
Okay. Rabbi, do you understand the question?
Yes, of course.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thank you, caller from New York. Let's hang up, and Rabbi will take your question, answer your question for you. Thanks. All right, go ahead. Phone lines are back open. If you call in, you'll be placed on hold. Be prepared to wait 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes, whatever it takes, okay? Sit tight. Rabbi?
So, so here's the question. It says it's not in the Jewish scriptures. He's quoting a passage from what's called Pirkei Avos, chapter of Fathers, specifically chapter 2, the 14th. Rabbi Eliezer says there that a person, of course, should be deeply engaged in the study in Torah. V'da ma lahashiv la bikaris, v'da ma hashiv la bikaris, and know how to respond to a heretic. Okay, so we're going to put that all together.
Okay.
And therefore, ordinarily, it would be forbidden for a Jew to study or engage or go to a Hindu temple or study the Bhagavad Gita or stand in front of a statue in a Greek Orthodox church. All these things are absolutely forbidden. In fact, the Torah says, Lo yishom al picha, that in fact that, and now that you shouldn't even think about other gods. The Torah says it openly, it's forbidden. However, sometimes spiritually, we're living in a time when there is great, where there is a dearth of knowledge, and there are those who are using our own scriptures to convert the children of Israel to Christianity, which is idolatry. And in such a case, a person should be deeply ensconced in Torah. If a person is not completely immersed in Torah, so then a person will not be able to do this. You have to be completely devoted to learning Torah, and then you should know how to respond to the apikaris. The apikaris here is the heretic. There is actually a double meaning here, and that is, the Talmud tells us that if a heretic, someone who opposes the Jewish faith, uses the Jewish scriptures in order to persuade you to abandon your Jewish faith, you should know that the answer is always nearby, always. So therefore, it's there's a double meaning here, and that is, if you are well ensconced, familiar with the Jewish scriptures, then if a passage is presented to you by a heretic, you will know how to respond because you have an intimate familiarity with the text of the Torah. But it's important to know how to respond to the apikaris. And I will say this, that if you're on a university campus, I'll say this to all the young listeners, you're coming under pressures that you can't even imagine. You have no clue what's waiting for you. And there are, of course, missionaries that are they're not going to go to the University of Idaho. They're going to come to Queens College. They're going to go to Brooklyn College. They're going to go to SUNY Albany. They're going to go where the Jews are. And therefore, it is important to know how to respond to these missionaries. But know this. Notice what I do when I respond. I'm not holding I try to follow this, and this is the teaching of our sages. I don't simply say this is why a certain claim of the church is flawed. But what I do instead is I demonstrate what the text is actually referring to and seek to bring out the truth and the beauty of the Jewish faith. That means I'm not when I teach, I try my best. Please God, I do it for the way Hashem would want me to. But I've always felt that it was vital to fill a person up with Torah while responding to their questions, their probing questions, and this is what draws them back to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Therefore, if you feel committed to help in summation, if you feel committed to bringing Jews who have converted to Christianity, return back to the Jewish faith, then you must study their material in order to effectively respond. If you're not familiar with what Christians believe, you're going to find yourself, your answers will be very inadequate. And especially, you're an Orthodox Jew. You describe yourself, you went through the Talmud, you've studied in yeshiva, so they're going to look at you and say, look, this rabbinical student can't even respond to the question. And it's simply because you may not be familiar with the arguments that missionaries use, that Christian missionaries use. So it is important to be able to do that, especially in the time that we're living now.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay, we'll go ahead and take this next caller. Caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hey, William, this is Michael.
Oh, yeah, I thought that number looked familiar.
From Florida. How you doing?
Hey, doing great, Mr. Curtis. Go ahead and tell Rabbi the question you had earlier. That was actually a great question.
I've recently completed my first 3 months of conversion classes. And you really inspired me, Rabbi, tremendously. But I've really come to appreciate your comment about how someone doesn't have to convert in order to share in the afterlife. But one thing I wish you would distinguish in as much detail as possible is the exact differences between, and forgive me, I'm pausing because there's some feedback.
Sure.
Between the afterlife for an observant Jew versus the afterlife for an observant Noahide. And I jokingly told William earlier, it's not a matter of wanting to do the least we can if we were going to share in the exact same rewards after we die. But I know on several occasions you and other rabbis have said you don't need to convert. And so this was the really critical point for myself and my family, is to distinguish between the afterlife of an observant Jew versus the afterlife of an observant Noahide.
Awesome.
And I'll hang up, and thank you both so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. Talk to you soon. Shalom, by the way. Yeah, that's deep. I hear this all the time, Rabbi. It's like, why would a Noahide, for example, just dedicate, I'm just saying from an outsider's perspective, not from inside the mind of that particular Noahide, but just say, for example, why would a Noahide go through all the trouble of dedicating his every existence of being a righteous Gentile, like on a very extreme level, when he knows he's going to have to sleep out on the front porch and he's not going to be allowed inside the house? That's the general thought, because Noahides all across the board feel like they're second-class citizens. Go for it.
I just did, in fact, you were there, William. I just spoke in
that was great.
In Texas, and that was the very substance of my presentation. When I speak, I think.
Oh, internet's doing goofy things again. Let me see. Let's see if I can get him back here. Hang on. Yeah, he really did. It was a really good question presented at Nativ. If you're not familiar with it, nativ.net in Houston, Texas. It's a great Noahide community. Rod Reuven, David Bryant is the leader there. And Rabbi Singer was there for a couple days. Answered a lot of really good questions, and this was actually one of them. So let's see if I can answer here. Might go through. It looks like that. My speeds here are really good, so we should be good on my end. We'll see. Let's try again here. Well, I guess we'll find out tonight with Rabbi Skovak. If we have the same issue, then it's going to be something on this end. But usually if the speeds are all right, there shouldn't be any problems here. So let me turn this down just a little bit. Okay, we're going to give him a few minutes like we did before. So if you guys want to call in with more questions, you can. The phone line's open. Jason Akers, if you don't mind, my brother, it seems like a lot of our callers are hearing an echo. they hear themselves echo. So maybe if you got some time today, if you don't mind, give me a call and we'll see if we can kind of troubleshoot and figure out why they're hearing an echo. I'd appreciate that. Tell your wife hello for me too, by the way. And let's see. Okay, so we'll just give it just a moment or so. Yeah, so there was a lot of good questions coming in. And let me try this again. Oh, let me take this real quick. Hey, this is William. Please tell me your name, where you're calling from. Oh, this is
William,
Michael.
this is Michael again, but I wanted to clarify one small point.
Okay, please. That'll be good.
And that is, even though the point about Noahides feeling like second-class citizens is a key issue, don't let my question be that. My question is specifically the afterlife differences.
You got it. I'll make sure we clarify that.
Thanks so much, buddy.
You're very welcome. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye. Okay, yeah, good point. I'm glad you clarified that too. That's good. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of delete that last part. Okay, cool. All right, so, well, let's try one more time, and we'll see if he'll pick up. So, really not sure why we're having an issue with him today, so guess we'll find out in just a moment. But anyway, so also for all you viewers out there, we have a new website up. It's not new overall, but it's new in the past couple months. TanakTalkNetwork.com. You can go there, and it's not a place just for my resources. It's a place for all the other people's resources. Like you can go to the website and you'll find Rabbi Singer and his own personal stuff that he's got going on. Rabbi Skovak, he's got his links to Outreach Judaism. It's kind of like a one-stop shop for anybody who's looking down this journey where they can find a lot of different people's resources. So, hey, welcome to the show. Please tell me your name, where you're calling from.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Afroz, calling from New Jersey,
Yes,
USA.
sir. Yes, sir. Welcome back. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
What's the question for Rabbi?
Do we have the Rabbi?
No, it disconnected on him again. My guess is he must be having some serious internet issues there for some reason. So we're just going to stay online, take a few more calls, give him a chance to kind of reconfigure, and I'm going to call him back and see if he'll be able to answer. So if you want to present your question now, or you don't have to, and you can call back later. It's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can ask the question now.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the question I have is about anti-Semitism, and what I understand from Rabbi's teaching and other resources, that for the main source of the anti-Semitism for past 2,000 years was the Christian Bible.
Okay.
But the after the Enlightenment, when the religion becomes somewhat not that important, then after the Enlightenment, there were different theories where they put Jews and other people in a sort of lower category of human race and whatnot, such as the Wil'lam, Mar, and others. Okay. So I would like to know how much of these theories, these secular theories, played part in the anti-Semitism, the Holocaust of the 20th century.
Okay, do me a favor, because I heard you clearly, but I don't understand your question completely, and I'm sure Rabbi probably will. If you want, let's keep an eye on the show. Try to call back in and ask him directly. That way he can ask you questions if he needs clarification on something. Would that be okay for us to do that? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
But basically, I want to know, after the Enlightenment, the secular theories, the racist secular theories, how much role they played in the massacre, massacre and genocide and the Holocaust of the Jewish people.
Okay.
I'll call back.
Okay, yeah, please do. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Afroz. Shalom, shalom.
Thank you.
Okay, good deal. Let me try him again. Looks like he tried to call in, but then it disconnected. Let's see if he takes it this time. Yeah, there we go. Looks like it's connecting.
All right.
Okay. Okay. All right. So where did you get disconnected at? Everybody else probably knows but me.
All right. I'll it makes no difference. I'm going to just answer him in full.
Okay.
It's actually it's not a difficult answer. The problem is that the Tanakh
Oh yeah.
doesn't explicitly um, this doesn't explicitly answer his question. And when I'm asked questions, unless it's a question from Talmudic literature, like the previous caller, I prefer to answer from Scripture. The problem, it's not a major problem, but the problem is that Tanakh, the Jewish Scriptures, spends very little time. There are no more than a handful of passages in the Jewish Scriptures that describe the afterlife in any kind of detail. And in fact, when it is described, it's described passingly. There isn't this emphasis on the reward in the afterlife because it's unfalsifiable.
Oh, right, got it.
Then all religions promise an afterlife. If people never died, then most religions would go out of business in a moment. But this is a person's greatest fear, but you can't test it. And therefore, this is a point that must be made, is the Torah is always saying, remember the past. Remember that I have kept my promise, both the promises that you'll be restored, the promises of the exile, and so on. But God is always calling upon us to remember the past and to remember that I'm the God who took you out of Egypt, appealing to the national revelation, never appealing to a reward in the world to come, although it's mentioned, which means that we're dealing with just a few verses in Tanakh. So what is key, I'm going to point to one passage. So first of all, let's state this, that Ben Noach has a very unique opportunity, which means a person who is not converted to Judaism, but who's righteous and a follower of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and keeps the laws that are incumbent on such a person, that person is assured a place in the world to come. Let's begin there.
Okay.
Now, the question I think he's asking is, what about the resurrection from the dead? That's his question. I don't know if I read that.
No. His question is very specifically is after the resurrection of the dead, and it's in the Olam Haba, the world to come. What is going to be the lifestyle difference, if you will, between the Orthodox Jew and the ones who converted to Orthodoxy and the ones who have not, who decide to remain as a Noachide?
Oh, that's easy. Then you just made my job very easy.
Okay, good.
Then I'm off the hook in a much more complicated answer. So if that's the question, so the answer is that the difference is that the role of the Jew will be where it should always be, and that is to be a priestly nation, a mamleches kayanim v'goy kadosh, Exodus chapter 19, verse 5 and 6. This will be fulfilled in its completeness as we see in Zechariah 8:23, and 10 men of different languages will grab the shirt of a Jew and say, take us with you, and be careful. The word you there is plural in the Hebrew, imachem. Jeremiah 16, verse 19 and 20, the Gentiles will come to you, and they will essentially say, now we know that we've inherited lies and vanity. We need to learn about God from you. So number one, the Messianic age will be a time when the world will reach its state of perfection, and the Jews will, it doesn't mean all Jews, it doesn't mean Bernie Madoff, and it doesn't mean that this other, whatever his name is, I forget that billionaire's name. I'm talking about those who are devoted, those who are the faithful remnant described in Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 12 through 16, that they will, number one, be the teachers of Torah in the world to those who are not the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And two, which is a significant difference as well, is that the Jews will be permanently restored to the land of Israel, all of them, except for those who are wicked. And we see there are many Jews, and I'm not going to go through it, but those who are faithful, the Jews who are faithful, will be.
All right, let's try again. Sorry about the connection loss again. Let's just sit tight for a moment. Okay, and Afroz, I know you're online. Just don't hang up, okay? Because as soon as he finishes this one, we'll go ahead and take your call, okay? So just sit tight. All right, let's see. And now it's not even trying to connect to him at all. I wonder if his internet's off. Let's try again. Ooh, it's been a challenging day, that's for sure. Call Skype. One more time. Oh, my. All right, so don't know how much longer we'll be able to keep doing this bouncing in and out. But I guess we'll see how things go. Anyway, what I was telling you earlier, TanakTalkNetwork.com. It's just a one place shopping for it's like going to the mall and finding all these different types of food, Chinese food, blah 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 blah. You just big food court, right? It's really what it kind of is. So, in a way, it's somebody asked me, is it going to be like Chabad.org? And the answer there is no, because Chabad.org is a place where they're pushing all their content. They'll have all the other things there. And for Tanakh Talk Network, it's not. It has my content there, but it also has everyone else's individual content there. You'll find, like in the books category, you'll find some other people who are not on the front page, whereas Jono from truth2you.org, and then Jason Spiritual Babies, things like that, and it'll send you links directly to them. So, all right, I guess this could be our test for strike 3. Let's see how long we can hang on.
Right. Actually, I answered the question already.
Okay, all right, good deal.
I'll just repeat this point very quickly.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
And that is that in the Messianic age, both the Jew and the Gentile have a place in the world to come if they're faithful, if they're righteous. The role of the Jew will be a light to the nations. The nations will come to the Jew and say, teach us about God, instead of now nations are coming to the Jew and trying to teach us about their gods. So that's number one. Number two is the geography, where people will live. The Jewish people will all be restored back to the Holy Land, as described in many places in Scripture, including Isaiah 43, verse 6, for example, where Hashem says, I will gather you even to the ends of the earth. Now, the nations of the world, it's not like they're going to stay in Romania. It's not like they're going to stay in Czechoslovakia or Miami. It's very clear that the nations will stream to Jerusalem, and they will Ki Mitzion Teitze Torah, because out of Zion will come forth the Torah, Devar Hashem, Yerushalayim, and the word of God from Jerusalem. We see in the last passage of the book of Zechariah that the nations of the world and kings will bring sacrifices again in the final temple, in the Messianic temple. But the Jews will be restored back to the land of Israel, and the nations of the world will visit the land of Israel, will also bring their gold. You can read Isaiah 60 and 61 and so on, and they will want to do everything possible to contribute and sustain Jewish life in the Holy Land.
Okay, so let me, because I know specifically what Michael is actually looking for through this question, and so the last thing you just said is what I want to zoom in on now for just a minute. So the Jewish people will live in Israel, and they'll be around all, is everything Israeli. They'll be inhabiting it. They'll be existing in it, and it'll be a daily thing for them. So you're saying for the Noahide, they will not be allowed to do that.
No, B'nai Noach will be permitted to live in the land of Israel.
Okay.
As a Ger Toshav, but that will not be their indigenous place. At the end of the book of Ezekiel, very specifically, I encourage you to look at Ezekiel 46, but better actually 46 and 47, you see that the land of Israel is going to be divided up. Its borders will make the United Nations very, very unhappy. But God promises that the Jewish people will be permanently restored back to the land, and God will gather them as a...
Mm-hmm. And here we go again. We're not going to hang up just yet. I'm going to hang up, but I'm not going to close the show out because I want to get the rest of this answer in. It's happening more frequently though, so I'm not really sure how much further we can actually go. But so far, and this is what I'm going to ask him also to clarify, so that there is a difference. From what I'm seeing, it looks like a pretty big difference in the, I guess you could say, as Michael Curtis was saying, in the value of life for someone who converts to Judaism or is already Jewish, and the one who is not. So you'll be allowed to be in the land. I guess if you make it to the land, I don't even know what that means, but if you do make it to the land, does that mean that you will be sharing in all of everything that the Jewish people do? Because ultimately the question is, is it a true statement that the Jew and the non-Jew alike who submit to Hashem, is their reward the same? That's kind of where we're headed with this question, I'm pretty sure. So we'll see if we can get something more pinpointed on that answer. So just bear with me just for a moment. I'm going to see if I can pull up Rabbi's website, because if I can, that'll be a good thing for y'all to be able to see. Actually, I think I can. I've got something on the screen. That way I can kind of navigate you all. There's been people who have been messaging me who have said they've had problems locating the audio files. Where is my mouse? Oh, there it is. Okay. So they've had problems locating the podcasts. ORG, okay. And if I can actually show you exactly where to find them, it'll make your world a lot more fun. So let's see if I can pull this new shot here. There it is right there. Okay. So when you go to his website, outreachjudaism.org, if you'll look here on the top, let me get my mouse on the right screen again. Okay, so here you see, where does it say free audio? You know, it's really funny, it's not even displaying it right. But anyway, on this screen, you'll see a place that says free audio in that main bar across the top. When you click on it, okay, and then scroll down, you can see here all the playlist, okay? This is, each one of these are the different, let's see, hold on, is that it right there? Oh, no, the very first one here. Oh, yeah. So this very first one here, you'll see, I don't know why my mouse is displaying differently than where it is actually on the screen, so I apologize. But here, you'll notice that in the book, in both books, Volume 1 and 2, they will have the titles that correlate with these audio files, okay? So let me just go, if I can get my mouse to find it. Let's just go.
As you know,
the Trinity. This is
there are many different
just a little sound,
Christian denominations,
sound clip sample for you.
And they differ on many different issues, but there is an essential element of Christian theology.
Okay, so you can see he's actually lecturing on this, but the books actually give you different information. So somebody asked me, well, if I get the podcast, is it an audiobook? And no, it's not. It's not the audiobook. So it's definitely different information. And by the way, if you have, I just found this out while I was in Houston, actually. If you have Volume 1 from a long time ago, you don't need to buy the 2-volume book set, because Volume 1, even in the 2-volume book set, from what I understand, is the same book. It's just Volume 2 has been added to it. So with that said, it may be that whenever the 3-volume book set gets made, then it's very possible that if you've already got the 2 volumes, if I could talk him into doing a third volume, then you would be able to. Wow, it's so difficult to find 3 screens on a mouse. Okay, then you would be able to just buy the 3rd volume when it comes out. So just keep that in mind. So all right, we're going to try one more time. At this point, we're kind of we're in 12:30 now. So let me just see if I can get a hold of him one more time, so we can at least close in that one question, and then we're probably going to have to stop recording after this. Okay, I can see you and I can hear you. Good. Okay, Rabbi, just. Oh, sorry. I was playing a sound clip from your. Let me turn that down here just a second. Okay. Do me a favor before we even continue. Run a speed test for me and tell me what your numbers are, because it seems like the drop or the freeze is happening more and more frequently as we go on.
I will tell you that the indication for me is that a very strong signal.
Okay.
But what do I have to type in?
Speedtest.net. And just select begin test or go, whatever it is, and tell me what those numbers are. So I was explaining to them about the 2-volume book set and how if you've got the volume 1, you can just simply buy volume 2, and you'll have basically a complete set. I'm guessing, is that correct? The volume 1 that you originally made, that is the volume 1. I'm sorry, the original. The Q&A book that you have. Let's Get Biblical. Is that the same as volume 1 in the 2-book volume set, like word for word?
No, not even remotely.
Really?
No, not even close.
Then somebody in Houston, then they brought me a book because they were asking a question, and they brought me a book, and I compared the two, and they were like word for word. But then I got to thinking after I got back home, I got to thinking that, well, maybe they showed me volume 1 and not the original book. I'm glad you clarified that. So, note to everyone, if you have volume 1,
here's the speed test. It's ping 6ms, download 7.93.
And what's the upload?
Upload 0.97.
That's going to be your problem right there. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let me just shut off, actually.
Okay.
All the browsers, and perhaps that's what we'll do then.
Okay. Yeah, the upload, I think you got to have about 1.5 or better to actually have a fairly stable connection, I think. Jason could probably correct me on that if he's watching. But anyway, okay, so let's go ahead. Okay, I'm going to, right in the middle of you answering that last question, I was getting the impression that based on what you were saying, I would say if somebody told me, okay, in the afterlife, the life of an Orthodox Jew or convert, and then the life of a Noahide, for their afterlife experience to be the same, their reward is the same, I would say based on what you said, that's false. Am I interpreting that right?
Here's the problem.
Okay.
The term afterlife, can mean so many things.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is we have to talk about, are we talking about life after death? Are we talking about those who will be alive when the Messiah comes, Jew and Gentile? Are we talking about the resurrection of the dead? And so you're using a term, afterlife, or Olam Haba, the world to come,
right,
which is very generic and could be used to describe many different stages following the stage we're now. We're talking about people who die. We're talking about people who are alive when Mashiach comes. Let's say he'll come tomorrow. There'll be a distinction between Jew and Gentile. I need to know what stage we're referring to.
Specifically, afterlife, in the resurrection. At that point. Not whenever Messiah comes and everybody's still alive, and then.
You want to? Can I just ask a question?
Yes,
and you
please.
Just tell me because this is like too vague, and I need to give you a specific answer.
Perfect.
Will non-Jews resurrect from the dead? Is that the answer you want?
That's half of the question. The bigger half of the question is, when they do, and they are resurrected from the dead, will their reward in the Olam Haba be the same as an Orthodox Jew?
Yes, of course.
It'll be exactly the same. There won't be no difference.
It will be the same, but the requirement is a little bit different for a non-Jew.
Okay. Go ahead and talk about that.
You're taking me down a road that I don't know that listeners want, but I'll go with you.
Okay.
It's very critical. If a person is a Jew, then the Jew is required to study Torah. A non-Jew is not required to study Torah. However, the resurrection, listen very carefully, I've never taught this before,
okay,
but the resurrection of the dead is connected to either studying Torah or supporting those who do study Torah. You got that? It's very important.
Okay.
It's based on a single passage in Tanakh, and it's in Isaiah chapter 26, verse 19, where it says, Yechye Mesecha, your dead will live, Nevei Losi Yakumun, your corpses will arise, Hakitzu Ranu, rejoice and shout out. Sheichne Ofar, those who are dwellers in the earth, meaning those who are in the graves, but the language of Sheichne Ofar means those who are temporary dwellers in the earth, because it's the word Shochen implies not a permanent place, but rather a temporary place. For example, in Hebrew, if you're renting an apartment, you're a Shechen. You don't own the place, you're just temporarily staying there. Now, so the grave is called a temporary place for those kital oiris talecha. Now here's the key, because the dew is the dew of light. This is a very ambiguous term, but the dew means this is the arising, this is the new day, and it is connected to Oirecha, which means the light. Now, what does this mean? So, we have to then connect this to another passage. And that other passage is Proverbs chapter 6, verse 23. What is light? Well, the term light we find everywhere. Arise and shine, for your light to come. Kings will go by your light, which means the nations of the world will follow the Jewish people in Torah. It doesn't mean the Jews are going to hold flashlights. Therefore, those who resurrect from the dead are either those who are required to study Torah or those who facilitate the Jewish people to study Torah. They're the ones who assured a resurrection from the dead.
Okay, so the Jew will be the one studying Torah, and the non-Jew will be there to facilitate that.
Right, now, non-Jews are required to study Torah that relates to the seven Noachide laws.
Okay.
Be aware of that. That means that how would a Noachide know the laws of damages, and all this applies to a non-Jew. But it's very important for a non-Jew who's a righteous, we call them a righteous Gentile, even though the word Gentile is not a Jewish word, it's a Latin word, but I'm just going to use it because it's conventional.
Sure.
And that is that if a person is a righteous Gentile, they should do everything possible to support and nourish the study of Torah among the Jewish people. And in turn, what happens is that the Jewish people, if they are engaged in the study of Torah, they will then be able to be a light to the nations and pour out and be a source, a shefa, of pouring out onto the non-Jews. So the key of the resurrection for anyone is that you must be engaged in the study of Torah or supporting others who are learning Torah. It's based on this passage.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for going into greater detail on that.
I did, of course, again, you have to take a text, take it apart, connect to another text, because the text is very ambiguous, and the Talmud explains in great depth.
Okay, great. Okay. All right, we're going to take this next caller. This is Afroz from New Jersey. Afroz, welcome back. Thanks for being patient, and thanks for calling back with your question, too. Go ahead and talk to Rabbi.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum, Rabbi. Good afternoon.
Alaikum salam, Afroz. How are you feeling?
Much better, thank you. Quick question, sir. After the Enlightenment, when the church lost much of its power, there were theories, racist theories, describing Jews and Gypsies and all others in a very negative manner, the pseudoscience theories. I want to know how much role they played in the Holocaust. Thank you. So
I
this is
apologize. No, don't get off, because I did not understand your question. What role did what play in the Holocaust? Pseudoscience? I'm not sure.
Yes,
Could you repeat that part?
There were theories. There were theories describing Jews to be some kind of lower form of in human race, and so these kind of pseudoscientific theories, did they play any role in the Holocaust in Europe?
And you mentioned Wilhelm Marr also, or Wilhelm Marr, whatever his name was, earlier. Arfros?
Yes.
Okay, so don't hang up yet. Rabbi, are you following along?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so should we go and disconnect?
Sure.
Okay.
You can, Afros.
Okay, thank you, Arfros. Shalom aleichem.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
No.
Okay, so Rabbi, do me a favor, restate the question, as simple as possible, please.
This is a very interesting question. I've never been asked this question in my life. And I'm very grateful to Afros. He's a very, 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 very sweet man. Okay. So the question is, what made it possible for the Holocaust, for the murder of 6 million Jews during World War II, where virtually all of European Jewry was destroyed? Now, before I get 1,000 emails on this saying, well, there was 70 million people who were killed in World War II, and roughly 2/3 of them civilians, I'll quote Elie Wiesel, who said, not every victim was a Jew, but every Jew was a victim. That means people were killed, but the Jews were killed purely for who they were. It's a very complete distinction. And Afros is asking, what was the major contributing feature to the Holocaust? That because we know we've studied this, that in order for a people to commit a genocide, to commit a crime against another people, they have the victim must be dehumanized completely. The Germans referred to the Jews specifically as Untermenschen, as subhuman. But now they considered other people to be inferior, like black people they considered inferior. But the Jew was worse. To the Jew, the Nazis considered the Jew not to be Untermenschen, subhuman, in the sense that they considered them just an inferior race, but they considered the Jews a pernicious race that was basically demonic. Okay, so there are two contributing factors to how the Nazis saw the Jewish people. There is no doubt in my mind, and of course the evidence is clear, that if there's one idea, one contributing factor to the Shoah was Christianity. If Christianity never existed, there would have been no Holocaust. And in fact, Streicher and others, they were quoting left and right from Luther, and Luther, a German theologian, and perhaps the most important figure in the Reformation, and his vicious attacks on the Jews. And I don't mean the vicious attacks in 1543, toward the end of his life. Luther died in 1546. Luther was a virulent anti-Semite, and his thinking and his teachings, and the fact that when Luther had a thought, he can publish it, because Luther unfortunately lived at a time after the invention of the printing press, and as a result, Luther's thoughts were published, and it poisoned the mind of the Germans, it poisoned the mind of the European against the Jews. Now, it's not just Luther. His anti-Semitism was really, really very racial, and there were church fathers who were like this too, the Golden Tongue John and others, but that's why it's not an accident that the Holocaust occurred only in Christian countries. In fact, the yeshiva I attended, the Mir Yeshiva, was saved by the Japanese, who were allies of the Nazis, the Mir Yeshiva, a lot written about this, not all of it, but much of this rabbinical school, was able to flee to occupy China and then make their way to Japan, and were safe in Japan till the end of World War II. And this is astonishing, because the Japanese were a very prominent member of the Axis. They were allies of the Nazis. So, and the Nazis were infuriated by the fact that the Japanese would harbor the very Jews, people like me, the very Jews that they wanted to send to Auschwitz. But Japan was not a Christian country at the time. Japan had it was an emperor worship and some Taoism. I'm not going to go into it, but it wasn't Christianity. And therefore, they really just didn't understand anti-Semitism. So therefore, there can be no greater contributing factor to the Shoah than Christian teachings, not just the canonical teachings found in the New Testament, also post-canonical texts like the Gospel of Peter and other texts that never made it into the Christian Bible but were very popular, that describe Jews as murdering Mary, Bishop Melito, that 2nd century, all the church fathers, every one of them who were revered as saints, portrayed the Jews as literally the devil, the enemies of God, not people who simply were unsaved, or not people who didn't know enough, as Paul gives sort of a free pass to non-Jewish philosophers in Acts 17, but people who deep down knew the truth of the gospel and the cross, but rejected it anyways. I mean, the Jews were absolutely demonic. John 8:44. And this was very, very real to Christians in Europe. And there's something so powerful about Christian anti-Semitism is that even if you have Christians that are not particularly devout in going to church weekly, the anti-Semitism sticks. That portrayal of the Jew stays there. As it turned out, during World War II, Germany's population of just the two major Christian denominations, Germany was 65% Lutheran, about 35% Roman Catholic. A considerable number of the Roman Catholic Church were members of a disproportionate number were members of the SS, according to historian Paul Johnson. But there was another contributing factor, and this is really wild, and that is a man who, his name was Otto Winninger. Otto Winninger was, believe it or not, he was born in 1880. He was an Austrian philosopher. He's an absolute genius. And he was a Jew. And he is considered the quintessential self-hating Jew. He despised the Jew in him. But he was a genius. He was out of his mind, but he was brilliant. And he committed suicide. He was only, I think, 22, 23 years old. And he so despised himself, the Jew in him, that he converted to Christianity to, in some way, eradicate the Jew in him. I'll get to his theory, his social theory in a moment. And ultimately, he still could not, escape the Jew in him. And he ultimately committed suicide. He actually blew his brains out. But he was an absolute genius. He was writing very advanced works, philosophical works. He died at 22, 23. I think he died in October of 1903. The the works that are germane here, believe it or not, is that he came up with the idea that this is an oversimplification, but that the world could be divided into two.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, let's just sit tight again and see what happens. I'm gonna hang up. He's definitely having interesting issues there. So, yeah. So we'll just see. We'll give it one shot. It's getting close to the time. It's actually about 10 minutes away from 2 hours anyway. So I'm gonna give him one more call, and if it doesn't work, then we'll go ahead and close the show, and then we'll just plan on seeing you guys next week. There's some good questions that were called in earlier, and I'd hate for them to get overlooked. But keep in mind, this is a live call-in show, so the only time we can ask questions whenever someone sends an email or a text. Or even leaving a message. It's only if we don't have any live callers. So that's going to be the general rule there. So, all right. Yeah, it's not connecting at all. Okay, well, I guess in that case, we'll go ahead and make it a wrap. Be sure to check out his website again, outreachjudaism.org. And if you don't have them yet, get the 2-volume book set. There's also a lot of other stuff on his website that you guys may not be aware of. I probably should get a couple stuff and just leave them here on the desk so I can show you. But he's got DVDs. There's I believe it's a 4-part DVD lecture series that he had done, which is kind of nice because you get to see his face, not just listen to him talk. There's the fascinating facts hidden in the Book of Chronicles. There's several debates that are floating around, and so all these things are available on the website. You can even get the copy of the disputation through his website, which is really, really cool. So with all that said, I guess we're going to go ahead and call it a day, and we will talk to you guys. Well, actually, somebody was trying to call in. Oh, no, they literally just hung up. So, okay, so with that said, we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. And sorry for all the technical difficulties, and we'll just see how next week runs. So, shalom to you and everybody else. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for calling in. To you guys that make the show possible. So, shalom, everybody, and we'll see you guys on the other side. Take care. Bye.